Almost a year ago, my friend Jess reached out to me and asked if I would do some poker coaching with him. At the time, I didn't know Jess, and I told him, hey, there's probably somebody better out there for you. But he persisted, and we ended up doing some poker coaching. Well, he's been after it for about 10 months now. He's doing really well, and you're going to get to meet him in just a moment. At this point, we're still doing some study sessions, but I asked Jess, hey, can I record these and bring the audience in so that they can share in them too? And he said he was up for it. So you're going to get to meet him and listen in, basically be a fly on the wall while we do a coaching session. Now, I'm going to make these available to, this one's going to stay on YouTube, but I'm going to start to make these available regularly to Patreon supporters. And what's going to happen is these will premiere, they'll be on YouTube for a short time, and then they're going to get archived to Patreon members. So if you're supporting this channel for just $5 a month, you'll now be able to win when I win. I'm still sending you 10% of my earnings when I win. But on top of that, now you're going to have access to these coaching sessions. So if you find them valuable or interesting, you'll be able to see all of them. And the Patreon information is going to be linked down below. So you can join just $5 a month, get paid, and on top of that, get access to all these coaching sessions as they come out. All right, I'm going to introduce you to Jess, and we're going to study some poker. Hey, welcome. This is Jess. We're doing an episode of, I guess, I don't even know what this is called yet. So I'm going to let you know in the title, I suppose. But this is Jess, and Jess reached out to me a while, but it's been almost a year now. And he's like, hey, I watched your videos. I really liked them. I'm looking for some poker coaching. And my initial response was, there's way better people to teach you. You don't want me to teach you. Find somebody else. You know, like I'd be willing to do it, but I'm not the best person. And Jess was like, no, I really want to do it. It's going to be worthwhile. Let's do this. And I'm so glad that you were persistent because it's been super fun. So, Jess, tell me about so this is what is it? 10 months that you've been really after it? 11 months now, something like that you've been really playing consistently and studying and all that.
Yeah, so we're in July, and I started playing consistently September of 22. So yeah, about 10 months. Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. And so we've been doing coaching pretty much that whole time. And what are your results so far? Tell me, because you've actually been able to make money so far in your first year, which most of us don't. So tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, before September, I would just play every now and again. And then I thought, just to play consistently, that's kind of how I'm going to make some progress. So I kind of committed to playing once a week, which was felt like a lot to me. I'm working full time. And so in that span, I've played 188 hours.
Nice.
So I'm keeping track of these things. 188 hours, and my hourly now is $23.32.
That's awesome for year one. That's fantastic. I love it. Okay, so then let's talk just a little bit about where you're playing, what game. Oh no, before we get there. Yeah. I need to back up just a second. You accomplished a goal recently, which is super exciting. When we started, you were at 5 days a week at work, and you were like, hey, I'm interested in going to 4. And you were just able to knock that out. Tell everybody what that feels like to go from 5 days a week to, hey, I'm going to play 4 and play poker one of the days.
Yeah, I think, I don't know how it is for everybody, but for some people, you kind of I've looked at poker as oh, this is a way to have an additional income, and maybe my job is very, it's very intense in a lot of ways, and to have, the hope was to kind of be able to work a little less and to have a fun thing like poker to add. And so it's been 2 months now that I've been working 4 days a week, and it has nothing to do with my poker winnings. My poker winnings are not supplementing my income, but I just kind of figured out that, looking at my expenses, I can work 4 days a week. Yeah. And I think that, that just took so much weight off, and took, it's just so much more fun playing when I don't have this extra push. I want to, I want to make this something more and something bigger. And it'd be great if those things happen. But yeah, so now I have a much more balanced life.
Nice. All right, tell us about where you're playing and where you live, and then we'll jump into a study session so everybody can join us here.
Sure. So I live in Austin, Texas, and I play at the Lodge, which is the biggest poker room here. And I play 1-2. I'm playing the lowest stake, and it's a $300 max buy-in.
But your typical open raise is two.
Yeah, a typical open raise is to $15 is the average. It can vary from like 10 to 20, but mostly it's like 15, 20.
Yep.
And so, yeah, when I think about it, it's helpful to think about like just like if we think about a standard raise from, if the standard raise is 15, if we were playing like a $5 big blind game, that would be, we would raise to 15. So $300 with like a $5 big blind, we're kind of playing 60 big blinds deep. So it feels pretty shallow. We're not
Yeah.
raising like 6 or 8 or something. We're
Yeah.
kind of deeper. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say you're playing more like a 2-3 to 2-5 game at times, but short stacked. Based on the way, I mean, typical 2-3, 1-3 game, $15 open, not uncommon. But the 2-3 to 2-5, yeah, the 15 to 20 is pretty common. So even though you're playing 1-2, it's Texas, so everyone is unafraid of the money, and and you're playing pretty shallow. So you get in some really tough spots that are. I know we've had some conversation about navigating where it's like, okay, if I was at home, here's what I would do. But in your situation, so
Yeah.
all right, well,
Yeah.
we're gonna jump into this. So we're just gonna these will be
Sure.
just recurring episodes, and what we're gonna do is we're just gonna talk some poker strategy. And Jess is basically we're gonna go through some hands that he's played and discuss what we would do. And you guys are welcome to just be a fly on the wall and enjoy. Hope you get something out of this. Well, tell me about this latest session.
Well, so I guess like what I took some notes before coming on, and I just like the broader theme here of what's happening lately. I'll kind of go into. One is that like I've had so much less stress now working 4 days a week, and I noticed like when I was doing 5 days a week and then playing poker. For me, we've talked about this before. For me, poker can be a little stressful. It kind of feels like playing Minesweeper at times. You're just like everything's fine, and then you kind of have to like be really alert. Like you're
Right.
getting really close, and then there's like hours of, and so it can be really stressful for me. And so I've been kind of focusing now that my life is just like less stressful overall. I really want to have fun when I'm playing and be kind of like just have a good mental space about it, be present. And so one of the challenges has been that in the last 10, okay, so in the last 10 sessions, so we're in mid-July now, so May 27th to July. So this is 2 month period about, I'm down 6 buy-ins. Uh,
Man.
so yeah, so, and it's, before that I was, I think I was like win 3 out of 4 times,
Yeah.
and so I never had actually a back-to-back losing session, I think, since I started playing September. And now in the last 2 months, I definitely have had them. So,
Hmm.
been down, yeah, 6 buy-ins. Um, uh, so it's been challenging.
Yeah. Yeah, and when we first started, we were talking about this before we hit record, but when we first started, Jess was like, "Yep, I won again. Yep, I won again." And I was thinking, though I didn't say it, I did say, "Wow, you are experiencing some serious positive variance." But what I didn't say
Yeah.
was, at some point, the negative variance is going to come and balance that out, because I didn't want Jess going to the table like, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to get wrecked next time I play." So, but
Well,
here
I
it
didn't
is, and
believe
now
you.
it has
Like,
arrived.
when you said, "Oh man, you're experiencing some good variance," like I didn't believe you, honestly. I was like, "No, this is like I've had some bad beats, like
Yeah.
it's kind of just." But yeah, I've had some like runner and 2 4 outer, and then also like I'm not I'm not like like Doug Polk over here. Like I'm making mistakes, like I've been
Right.
definitely making
Sure.
mistakes that I look back and like, oh yeah, that boy, I could have done that differently.
Yeah.
Um, so
So
yeah, it's been a mix.
in the midst of that downswing, um, at what point did your mind start to go, oh my gosh, when's it going to end, or like what's happening? Have you felt that? Are you making good decisions? I guess is the question. Like, do you feel like you're sort of on this like prolonged tilt, or are you okay with your headspace? How are you feeling with that?
Yeah, I think um, every session I'm like, oh, will this be the end of this
Right.
losing period?
Right.
So I kind of have that thought. I think actually when I started working 4 days a week, I mean, that was my goal,
Hmm.
So that was what I think in some subconscious way, that was what poker was driving towards.
Yeah.
And once I reached that goal, I kind of relaxed and I played looser and I kind of,
Mm.
would play more hands and I'm not, we're playing short stack poker and I'm not that great to be playing that many hands anyway.
Sure.
Um, so, so then I thought, it was just like, actually I wasn't playing well, but because of like my life and I was just like, oh, okay. The stress was gone. And so I wasn't like as, disciplined and patient
Sure.
at the table,
Yeah.
because I just didn't have to be that disciplined. Anyways, I don't know. It just, so that's kind of how it started. And then kind of talking with you. And then, we have this Discord
Yeah.
channel and all that. So, anyways, talking with you, I was like, oh, wow, I'm really way off here. And I see the error of my
Mm.
ways. I see that, like, I've been playing these, like, speculative hands out of position, and even when I hit, I'm like paying off. Like, I can't, there's just a lot of challenges that I'm
Yeah.
facing. And I didn't, it just was like, okay, you know what? Poker does have to be this kind of, for me, like a little bit of a disciplined practice,
Oh,
So,
definitely. Yeah. Of
yeah. So it's not like, like on the YouTube channels, you watch videos and like all you see are the highlights. So you don't see
course.
the hour long of just sitting there like, oh my gosh, and
Yep.
all of
Yep.
that. So I just had to kind of shore that up and remember. And then I felt, I think my like attention span was also waning and making some mistakes there. And so I started to like, also in my life, like exercise more regularly and try to be more disciplined in other ways and then come back and I felt pretty good. And then I feel like it's been some run bad,
Mm.
but, I think it's the big thing I think I'm trying to do is like being disciplined, being patient and having fun, being
Yeah.
present. And so I think I'm getting there, but it's been a downer to kind of just be down. And I think in my last session, I lost this hand that was like, it was a 4 outer. And I think after that, I probably experienced some tilt. So I lost a little more than I needed to after that one.
Sure.
So I think probably if this downswing continues, I maybe I need to do shorter sessions and,
Sure.
just kind of figure it out. But yeah.
That's a really good point. Whenever I'm editing and I've had like 2 hours of folding, that 2 hours of folding gets summarized like that, right? Like, oh, I've been a little bit card dead, but now I got this hand. Like that's the whole synopsis. But the reality is anybody who's making a video, you're sitting there for 2 hours, pretty miserable, and that no cards are showing up. That the other guy who's terrible is winning, or whatever it is. It just it definitely gets in your head. So
I mean, I like some videos when they show like the timestamps, so
yeah,
you can kind of see how spaced apart they are. And
yeah,
then one thing I try to keep track of when I'm watching YouTube videos is like, what hands are they playing? And
yeah,
usually they're pretty good hands.
yeah.
And like I've noticed when I track my hands, like the hands I win a lot in are usually like pretty good starting hands,
Right.
So it can feel, I don't know, I've been really card dead, but it's like I'm still learning about what would be the normal distribution of cards I should expect in a given
Yeah.
hour. Like I don't have that feel just yet of like,
Sure.
is this lower? Is this higher? So
Well, and it's really easy to get jealous of the guy who has like Jack 5 suited and wins with it. And then we're like, oh, well, if he's playing Jack 5, we're going to get involved here with, Queen 8 suited because we're way ahead. And the next thing we know, we're playing trash to try to beat his trash. And then we're in a ton of trouble.
yeah, there's a lot of tilt.
Yeah.
I'm realizing like there's a lot of tilt um, from at the table, just watching everyone else,
Yeah. Yeah.
watching when I fold like, ace five and it's like 5-5 something. And I'm like, oh
Yeah.
my goodness. So there's a lot of tilt that,
Yep.
I guess I define tilt as like the things that happen at the table that move us from what we intended to do, and
Agree.
like
Yep.
there's just so it's really a challenging game. I yeah, I guess one thing that so that's kind of yeah, that's uh, I had some other thoughts, but on the downswing, um, I just I don't know, like I just feel like I want to be present. I want to have a good time. I'm going to, play my game as best I can and be disciplined and then
Yep.
try to have the insight when I'm not playing well and try to correct it, and like just, it's hard we all say it like, don't be results oriented, but man, it's really, when the results are poor, it's like really hard.
I,
It's really
I
hard.
agree with you.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you have some hands you want to talk through, some spots?
Yeah, let's see. So I don't have anything like to share on the screen, but you know, I think the big theme I've been trying to figure out, and I've been looking at the table, watching at the table, is like playing hands out of position.
Mm-hmm.
So usually when I'm like in an early position, I'm playing, a pretty narrow range, pretty strong hands,
Yeah.
and um, I open them and they're often, it'd be great if it's called one, just by one person in position. That's hard, but then, it's not uncommon to have two, three, four, five callers,
Right.
like, and then how to navigate a hand out of position, multi-way, or even like heads up, like over multiple streets when on my at most times I have a medium strength hand.
Mm-hmm.
Most times I have like ace king and a king hits, or
Yeah.
I have pocket queens, and maybe hopefully the flop is lower than a queen. And it's a static hand, and it's not really going to be improving over the streets.
Yeah.
And I just um, feel like, yeah, I feel like it's pretty transparent when I can go through a hand where the guy read my hand, correctly, or I don't know how you want to proceed, but
Yeah. Well, really quick. So if your typical opening range under the gun, let's say, we'll call it 10%, pretty tight. If
mhm.
you're getting five callers, the majority of the time, you're getting multiple callers when you open from under the gun. What adjustments should you naturally make?
You could raise larger.
Okay.
Um, if you wanted to keep, like, if I want to keep a standard size, and not just kind of, if I want to keep a standard size and it gets called in multiple spots, I'm thinking that I'm thinking you have to proceed with caution. Like you have to proceed with caution, and you might. Uh, I'm thinking more about maybe depending on what the flop is, you know, keeping in that checking range strong to kind of shorten. If it checks through, then you only have two streets, and you're kind of shortening the hand.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're kind of reducing the money you lose out of position. Because I mean, people can have when you get called 4 or 5 ways, I mean, there can be sets and two pairs and all of these things. And the vast majority of the time, I don't have a set. I have like a pretty one pair sort of hand that I could be pushed off of, sometimes. So
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
Well, tell me, like, what's your weakest pair you're going to open pre-flop from under the gun?
Under the gun would be like eights or nines. Um,
Yeah, I would say somewhere in that range. Sevens is probably the weakest that you would typically see, but yeah, eights are probably pretty close. So somewhere sevens to eights are pretty normal. But if you're getting called, especially multi-way, now you're really set mining those hands. They're going to lose a
yeah,
lot. When you don't hit, you're just going to end up folding. You don't have any fold equity pre-flop or near zero. So those hands get really tough to play. So naturally, if we want to go to a larger sizing and be more effective post-flop, we can trim off some of that bottom of the range, get rid of some of the lower, weaker hands that aren't going to get the showdown easily, and then start to play some of the stronger, it seems really nitty, but go even stronger into that range, but then take a slightly larger sizing to make it even harder for people to call you. And then if they're calling you, they're calling like 30, 40, like if you get to this huge sizing where all you're opening is premiums and they're calling with almost anything, but now they're paying a sixth of their stack to see the flop or whatever it is, like a huge portion of their stack to see the flop. Now you kind of have you have a better position to maneuver. You shouldn't get as many callers, and then your range is even stronger when you do get called. So, but then you still have to proceed with caution. If you open aces to 50 and you get 5 callers, I mean, that very surprising if that's the case, but it might happen in Texas. I don't really know.
yeah.
Texas
I mean,
surprises me constantly. So,
I used to like open to 20 when I was in early position, because they're mostly
yeah,
strong hands, but then you can get, it just depends. Like you can get all folds or you can get a couple callers or
right.
more. And I think I don't know. I feel like just opening all the hands the same, because then also like if you're building this bigger pot and you're the out of position player, even though you have like a stronger range,
Mhm.
it's just such a disadvantage. And then we're playing so short stacked. Um, so I've been, working on just like opening the standard size, but then really having to proceed with caution. If you get called in multiple spots, the pot is big. So, you know, if it's a if it's a flop that favors you, you can get a you can get a good sized pot. But
Mhm.
if it doesn't, you really have to like say, okay, this is a one pair hand. This is all that this is, and
Sure.
really watch what's happening around.
What would you say is like the worst hand that's calling you? Five callers behind. What's the worst hand that's calling you?
Worst hand that's calling me is uh, I mean, all the pocket pairs are calling me,
Okay.
all of them.
Okay.
Um, I would say that you got plenty of people wanting to see if their suited connector hits.
Okay.
So, I mean, even down to like 6-5, you know, I
Hmm.
could definitely see that. And then, of course, like the random Queen 10 suited, King Jack suited, Queen 9 suited. I think like even Jack 9 suited, like it's just so, um, this is the challenge with, I think probably Texas too, is like hand reading multi-way is, it's a challenge. But,
So
um,
how big do you have to go before Queen Nine will no longer call you?
well, I mean, you could go, I think if you go to 25 to 30, then you're really only getting, unless somebody's, you really do fold out a lot of hands.
Okay.
Um, yeah, it's, I mean, yeah, yeah, then you have a more narrow range of what's
Right.
calling you. So then you would have like, you wouldn't have all the pocket pairs probably, but you'd probably have like eights plus, and you'd have some suited connectors. maybe like Broadway stuff, probably. You
Okay.
know,
So we're going to
probably.
pay an extra $5, and how many callers are we going to get on average compared to when we raise to 20?
20. If we go up to 20, um, I still think it just depends on the game. Like if somebody has $100, then they're not playing. But if people are deeper, which people can be pretty deep,
Yeah.
um, you know, 20, they you could still get lots of pocket pairs and of course all the Broadways and so you could narrow it maybe from four callers to three. And and sometimes it just
Mhm.
depends on the day because like there's days of the week that are pretty like Sunday nights are like pretty mellow. Like you get
Okay.
one or two callers, but then
Okay.
Friday night is like bingo, and you
Okay.
get more callers. So
So if you let's say it's a bingo night, you make it 30. Under the gun, you open to 30, which is huge, right? Double what you would, maybe $10 more than you would normally do, whatever. Are you going to get 1 to 2 callers at that point? Or will they still just be like, I don't care, I'll pay any
no,
price?
no, no, you would get one probably one caller. I mean, probably just one, I would
Okay.
think.
So tell me about your SPR if you go to 20 versus
Hmm.
30 and you get 1 caller versus getting 5 callers, how much what's your SPR like in those scenarios?
Well, if I get like five callers on a $20 raise, then we're looking at 120
Hmm.
in the pot. And if I have 300, then it's about like two and a half SPR.
Okay.
Um, so pretty low. And then 30 would be if I got like one caller, it'd be 60 in the pot or 65. And
Hmm.
um, so 300 would be five SPR of five if it was heads up, on a $30 raise. Um, Also, like it's pretty. I don't know. Like I don't know if I would raise to 25 or 30 if I had like ace queen suited. Like I still like
That's
would be
okay.
like, oh man, but like
You can you
aces
can trim
queens.
that out of your range. That's the whole point, right? Like you can snug this up pretty good to where you're comfortable doing it. But which of those two scenarios? I'm going to give you aces every time, just for the sake of argument. You have aces, and you raise it to 20, and you get a 2.5 to one, or you go to 30, and you get a 5 to one with one opponent versus 5 opponents. Which of those scenarios do you prefer?
I mean, the 5-to-1 with heads up is a lot easier to navigate,
For sure,
and it's
for sure.
still not that we're not that deep, so you can kind of get where you're all in with a couple of you could get there,
Yep.
still. Um, yeah, it's just so face up though, It's like I wouldn't say that. I mean, 30 is if it's 1-2 with no straddle and somebody raises to 30 under the gun.
Hmm.
It's I give them credit. I give them credit
For
that
sure.
uh, yeah, they would, you know they know what they would be getting into.
Right. I guess what I'm encouraging you to do is find. Oh, that's me. Sorry. Let me mute my phone. I guess what I'm encouraging you to do is find the pain threshold, because somewhere out there, there's a point where people are going to go, that's too much. I'm not going to play Jack 5 suited. That's too much. My Queen 9 needs to go in the muck. And then you're able to narrow it down. And, well, so one more question, just an estimate. You have aces, they have anything else. Give me just a ballpark of your equity. Like, it doesn't have to be exact, but just where are you at
Oh
equity
yeah,
wise?
yeah. Well, it's like 80%.
Right. Exactly. So now you have 5 opponents. Again, just you don't even have
Oh
to give me a
yeah, it's
ballpark, but
like
how much is your equity
no,
there?
it's probably. I mean, if I have five opponents and I have aces and we're all going to the river together,
Yep.
it's probably like 40%. It's
I've
my
never
guess,
even
maybe.
calculated it, but I know you're not a favorite.
Yeah,
So like, I
yeah.
guess
The
my
field
point
is,
is play with that pain threshold because you're going to be able to find how to get yourself into a more plus EV situation where you have high equity with a lower SPR, or sorry, a higher SPR, excuse me, higher equity, higher SPR versus a lower equity, lower SPR. And that should get you into less trouble, even though it seems preposterous to raise to 30 and 1-2. If people are dumb enough to call you, it's worth it for you because you're such a huge favorite, right? Like you own 80% of that $60 as soon as you get to the flop. Well, I shouldn't say pre-flop, excuse me. You own 80% of that. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I guess like, um, yeah,
I know it sounds crazy, but I would encourage you to play with it because if a guy let's just talk like a theoretical situation. A guy will call you with Jack 5 suited regardless of the amount you make it. What amount should you make it?
yeah. You should go all in. I mean, it's
100% agree. Yep.
yeah.
So
I
if
think
he's
it's
willing to overcall with a terrible hand, find that threshold. Like you charge him the maximum for his garbage until he's like, okay, now I'm going to tighten up and I'm only going to play ace, king, and aces and kings and all that. The moment you find that, now you're going, okay, I'm a little too large on my raise. Let me come down and find that threshold where his garbage is calling, but where you can get a worse hand to call. That's where you want to be. But if they'll call $50 pre-flop, do it. I know it sounds stupid, but do
yeah.
it.
No, I don't think. I mean, I think I don't know. I think that players see the big raises and they kind of know what they're getting into. So I think it's, and I really haven't been losing a lot with like going all in and like having being out of position and two people had a flush and and I'm like,
Yeah,
oh man, I have pocket aces here.
yeah,
Like it hasn't really come up that way, and I don't know. It's just so variable. Like there are some times where we go five ways, but then there's times where it's just like heads up. You want to get
sure,
some action. So it's like,
sure.
I guess it's just like kind of every table and kind of seeing what's happening, and then also my image. Like I've been so card dead,
Yeah,
but a lot of people aren't paying attention to like what I'm doing. So,
yeah,
but let me ask you this. I mean, the
yeah. Go ahead.
question is
Yeah.
like, so even if we okay, so even if we're going heads up or there's one to three opponents, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I think the big question for me is like, um, playing post flop three streets out of position. It's such a big disadvantage.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and, like if
Mm-hmm.
I'm the pre-flop raiser and like I open, say I get two callers and we go to a flop and like, say I have an overpair
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, you know, seven, seven, eight jack or something, or, something that's kind of connected that would hit like a calling range. Like you could have people that have had, like could have 10 jack or 10-9 or 8-7 or pocket sevens or could have queen jack, and say I have the overpair.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really, like if I'm betting three streets and they're calling every single one,
Mm-hmm.
there comes a tipping point where I'm kind of um, overvaluing my hand, and then they can raise at any time and kind of get everything, so like,
Yep.
or kind of have a big threat. So if I'm in that position where I have that kind of a flop and it's, two opponents, um, I just feel like I just feel like probably more of the time I should be, maybe I'm checking.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah. Jonathan Little. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but if I remember correctly, it's from one of his books where he talks about playing multi-way, and I think we've talked about this before, but if you don't have a hand better than a single pair and you're multi-way, you're probably not wanting to play it like it's a big hand. Even aces, like You go
Okay.
3-4 ways to a flop, you have one pair. And you'll find this from I can think of several other authors, but it really doesn't matter. The point is, like, your hand can shrivel up so quickly. Like Jack 9-4, right? Your opponents can have sets, they can have two pairs, they can have all kinds of stuff, they can have open-ended straight draws. You have no idea where they're at. You're out of position. Like, you should be checking even if you're in position and you have, a medium hand. I think it's okay to keep the pot small and not lose everything here. Sometimes you're going to want to deny, draws and stuff. Like on that particular board, if you're in position with aces, yeah, I would bet it if it checks to you, but then proceed with caution, right? You're probably going to want to take the turn off if you get multiple callers because somebody might be trapping you, or maybe you bet the turn and take the river off or whatever it is. But like the moment you get raised, you probably need to get out of there. Um, it's tough. I don't like playing multi-way, and again, this is why I would advocate go big pre-flop if you have to, if everyone's calling you, because getting it heads up is so valuable. The other thing I wanted to talk about is when we've talked about this too, but what's your way to win when you don't have the best hand in poker? We can bluff, right? So how much bluff equity do you have with 5 opponents versus 1 opponent?
Yeah, yeah. So even when we get like two opponents, you know, um, two opponents out of position, or maybe even in position, it's just, um, there is a greater likelihood of stronger hands.
Yeah.
So we should proceed cautiously when we
Mm-hmm.
have like kind of a static one pair holding.
Yep.
Because yeah, even if I'm ahead of them on the flop or the turn, I can get behind. I won't see a two pair. Like if it's Jack 5 they're playing, something.
Yeah.
So just kind of slowing down because like, that's the thing. I think with the Texas games, it's like, you can try to force the game to be something,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but the game is kind of what it is. Like there's just a lot of action and there's going to be a lot
Yep.
of callers and you have to proceed.
Yep.
Um, I mean, I think with three betting,
That's how
you
you're going to
can,
make your money.
yeah, you can
Yep.
squeeze, you can get a lot of
Yep.
dead money and you can get
Absolutely.
it heads up and you can like, just a simple C bet often,
Yep.
you don't need to win that often to
Yep.
kind of, to be ahead. So I think that's kind of a good adjustment, but, um, so I totally believe, yeah, so I think, yeah, that's the part I guess I've been struggling with is like, I'm playing, if I'm playing two or three opponents, I'm like, oh, great, I have an overpair and I'm kind of leading out. And
Sure.
then, I find myself in a pickle,
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
like by the turn or the river. I
Yeah.
mean, like the board straightens and then now this person's betting into me,
Yep.
and my hand is like kind of face up. It was like queen 5 6. And then, queen 5 6, two clubs. And then, you get an eight and then
Mm-hmm.
there's a seven. And then now all of a sudden they're jamming and there's like three
Right.
clubs, that hit on
Right.
the river and there's,
Yep.
four to straight. And I mean, what can I have here if
Yep.
I'm, so it's just, okay. So maybe take a street off, check. You don't want to play like as if you have the nuts when you have a single pair. And it's very tempting because that's the other thing I didn't realize. That's one of my weak points is that, I'm okay with being disciplined and I can handle that and waiting for good cards, but I'm not okay at letting those good cards go.
Go.
So
Absolutely.
you wait
Few
like
of us
two
are.
hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, you wait 2 hours and then you see
Yep.
kings and then,
Yep.
it's like, really? Like I'm gonna let this go? Like it's just painful, so I might take an extra street even though I
Yeah.
kind of know. So that's something I still need a lot of work on. So you would advocate like kind of checking behind and then like there was a last time I played there was a like I bet 15 early position king queen suited. This person behind me just get one caller. It's a nice Sunday night, nothing crazy. And then the flop is like queen. It's like I can't tell you exactly, but I didn't. But it's like queen, queen 6 7 or something like
Sorry,
that. And
what's your hand
so
again?
king queen suited, and
King
there's
Queen suited.
no,
Okay.
yeah, there's no hearts on the
Yep.
board, like so
Okay.
there's no backdoor stuff.
Okay.
So I just have top pair, and so I'm like just I just check because I'm like I figured this out. Like I just can't be because the last time on the very similar board, I do have that hand recorded. Like I opened pre-flop, I bet flop, I bet turn, and then the river is where you make the most money. And he's like, I know you have queens plus here. Like what else or sets? Like what else can you have to just do this into a player that you're not getting any information on? And he was
Yeah.
absolutely right.
Yeah.
And so like I was lucky to even get, and he had the top pair, top kicker. Like he
Mm.
had, a good hand, and he
Yeah.
couldn't call a river bet. So there was just no. So, anyways, so I checked, and then this person on that queen 6-7 board, he bet half pot. I called. Then the turn card brings like it must have been queen 6-7 rainbow, and then there's like two clubs now, and it's like
Hmm.
6-7-9, or I can't remember exactly
Hmm.
10, but it's a little more connected. And I check, and he bets like you know a third or something, like
Okay.
half or a third. And I'm like, okay, this hand's not going to get any better than what it is now. I've underrepresented it.
Yeah.
He's probably not. I mean, I'm not. It's. I think also in our game, everybody c bets. They c bet all the time on
Right.
everything,
Right.
and so when you see somebody checking and then check again on the turn, like it's just like so. Anyways, so he
His
bet,
one third
and
bet is weird.
yeah, it was like it wasn't like a huge bet. Um, it was like about the same as the flop bet, maybe a
Mm.
little more, and
Mm.
um, so then I was like, it was 20. It was $20. It was like 15 call. I check. He bet 12. I called, and then I checked turn, and he bet 20. And I was like, my
Yeah. I
thinking
like a
was,
race.
right? Like I
Yeah.
was like, if I call here, then I'm in a harder spot because like clubs come, the board straightens, the
Yeah.
pairs, he jams. Like I don't
Yeah.
know what to do here,
Yeah. And your
so
head's
I
up.
might
So
as
yeah.
well. Yeah, and then I don't. You've always said I should think about what to do on the river after like what should I be doing? Like
Hmm.
what is my tree
Yeah.
here?
What's
What
your
is my
plan? Yep.
yeah? What's my plan? So I raised to 55.
Hmm.
Um, and
Okay. So if you're raising, what, like what? Since we're talking about a plan, where does that put your SPR? And is that raise like what? Maybe we should ask like what we think he has. But like, let's say he's stumbled into like a pair and a club draw or something. Because that, I mean, it seems reasonable,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Maybe he's got like, I don't know what the king is, but let's say that is the king a club.
No, there was no king on the board. I had king
Oh,
queen of
queen.
like
I'm sorry. Is the
hearts,
is the queen a
and
club?
um, I don't think it was. I don't think
Yeah.
it
So then
was.
then I like it even more because he can have like queen jack of clubs here, right? And have a worse queen than you with a flush draw, or he can have like, I mean, he can have like a pair. I don't remember the exact cards, but if it's like a seven with a club or whatever, it's not a club out there, he could easily
Yeah.
have some suited connectors that are clubs that have a pair or something along those lines. So when he bets 20, I would raise, but depending on, I don't know your SPR. I've lost track a little bit here, but depending on your
Well, it's
SPR, you might go a little larger on your raise if you're trying to make those hands make a bad decision.
right. Yeah, I think by checking on the flop. I think it really does allow that opponent to make mistakes. It allows them to
Yeah.
make a lot more
Oh, I agree.
mistakes. Whereas if I just bet, he can just fold like all of his
Hmm.
third pairs and whatever, and
Hmm.
instead of betting them. So like, it's just like this is just occurring to me now. Like this is
Sure.
like a insight that I didn't realize. So but yeah. So what we have SPR wise is we had 30, go pretty much 30 going to the board, the flop, and then
Hmm.
we had 24, 54, and then we had 20 he bet, so it's 74 in the pot, and
Hmm.
I raised to 55. So
So you can make it like 130 basically, and he
yeah,
has to call
exactly.
$35 to win it, to win 165.
It's a really good ratio.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point. If you're gonna raise, I think I'd go larger to give him a more painful decision, if that makes sense.
So maybe like 80, like
That's yeah.
4x,
Mhm.
and then and then what? So he folded, and he said,
Okay.
"Man, if I checked, I could have just got a free card." Man, oh man,
That's exactly what he had. Then he had the draw, right? I would
yeah,
think some kind of a
yeah.
draw
He
where
had
he
some
was
kind of a
open
draw.
ended or club draw or whatever. So that's
Yeah,
perfect that you raised him. But yeah, just give him a little more pain, because the reality is if he had a club draw there, his price was pretty good
yeah. He
considering
probably had like
implied
a.
odds. You know.
He might have had a gut shot, and
Yeah.
he might just think, if
Yeah.
I hit a pair, it's good, or a pair plus gut shot.
Yep.
But hoping to hit two pair and then give me a lot of pain.
Yep.
So what? Okay, say he calls.
Okay.
say
Yeah.
say I
Hmm.
35, and he's like he has that same hand, and he's like,
Yeah.
you know what? It's $35. Let's gamble. And it's like it's a good ratio. It's a good for him. So now we're at like 165,
Hmm.
and we have like our SPR is like one, must be like one now, like one
Okay.
or ish. And what the hell do I do on, like a check
Right.
race? I look
Yeah.
strong,
Yep.
but he called me,
Hmm.
so he could have a wide array, especially with my sizing.
Hmm.
So I don't really want to put more money in with top pair, top kicker, or like not even top pair, top kicker, but like king queen. Like I don't really want
Okay.
to shove more in. So my feeling is like, well, maybe this check raise has, he's a little bit more hesitant to bluff. So I'll check, and then if he bets, depending on the sizing, so if the pot is 165 and he bets like 40 or something, it's like easy, which you see sometimes, like,
Okay.
but if he bets like all in, then I'm like, I check raise here, and then I
Yep.
checked on the river, and I think it's just a fold, like, so that's the spot is like, what do I do if the person calls, you know?
So that's why I was asking your SPR. I think that it informs what we're going to do on the river. And if we put ourselves in a terrible spot, then maybe that raise doesn't make sense. Um, the 1-to-1 is not ideal, but let's say we got there. I think you have a few options depending on your opponent. And this is like, you really got to hone in on what they're doing. So if they will bluff you often and a lot, and the obvious draws brick, then I think it's fine to put out the check and allow them to try to blast. If they're an opponent that's only going to put money in the pot if they have a hand, then I think it's reasonable if we're going to put them on some pairs, some draws. The small bet screams a draw to me. So I don't think you're going to bet very often. But when you check, if it bricks, I think you need to make that call, right? Like
Yeah,
if you think their range is draw heavy, I mean, you have to feel good about that. If you were to, if they blast all in, and they're not someone who's going to be bluffing a lot, you can check and let it go. You also have the option to put out like say you go like, if you have a 1-to-1, you go half pot, or maybe you go like 40%. Like you go with a smallish raise where they're not really going to raise you, probably half pot. They're not really going
yeah,
to raise you unless they have better, right? Because now
yeah, because
you're
they,
showing interest. So in that case, against certain opponents, you can bet half and then fold if they raise you, but that allows you to get value from worse. And if they go for it, even though you will have great odds to call, at that point you can go, okay, like they have me. There's no way I'm good here.
yeah, it's like right, yeah. So you can kind of put yourself where they don't really think you have a lot of fold equity, and
Mm-hmm.
then
Mm-hmm.
they're just going to kind of play straightforward.
Yep.
But I guess like this just all reminds me of like how hard it is to play out of position.
So hard.
Like it's like he bets, I call. I have
Yep.
like I'm at the this is a great hand. Like I
Yep.
actually hit a pair, and then he bets again. I check raise because like just to charge the draws, just to kind of define my hand a bit and
Hmm.
define his hand a bit,
Yep.
because on the river, if I just call again on the river, because that's what I'm check raising to avoid, is like to give him, to allow him to see a river card for his price, and then really, go to town on me on like when he hits. So,
Yeah.
um, it's just really hard. It's just,
Yeah, it is difficult. So I would really go with player tendencies at that point and really try to think, who is this person and what are they most likely to do given the hands that make the most sense. And if he calls 80, you got to say, wait a second, does he have a draw? When he calls your $55 bet, he's going to have a draw a lot. So I guess that's the difference, right? Like you got to think,
yeah,
how often do they have a made hand? They're going to have a good hand fairly often when they call your 80. And so then maybe you don't want to bet. Maybe you want to check and be willing to fold. Maybe you want to put that blocker bet out. That might be the ideal scenario when you think they have a hand, but it may not be as good as yours. Like maybe they have queen jack, but like I guess I try to take this mentality. If I'm going to call a river bet, I'm okay leading out and then finding out that I'm no good because I would have called the bet anyway, right? Like let's say if he bets half pot, I'm going to call. So I'm going to bet
yeah,
half.
yeah.
I'm
You
going to
might
bet
as
the half
well.
pot, and then if he tells me I have a worse hand, okay, I can get away from my hand.
Yeah,
But it's so
yeah,
rare that
yeah,
people
yeah,
will raise
yeah.
you on the river when they don't
No,
have the
they
goods. So
won't. Never like bet raising. Like that's just not a. But it's like same hand, right? Same hand. King, queen, in position. Flop comes
so
queen, blank,
easy.
blank. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
he checks, I bet, he calls,
yep.
check, check, and
Right, you get
then
to take the turn off. Yep,
yeah, yeah, take the
yep.
turn off, and then he can kind of bluff because he's like, oh, he's weak, and I can
Right.
easy call.
Yep,
He can check, and I can decide, is there a little bit more here? And I can
yep.
bet. It's so easy. Like it's
So
just
easy.
so much easier. Like
Yep.
if I was like wanting to be deceptive, like I wouldn't slow play that, like but it's like it's just so much easier. You just see how much easier. Whereas like out of position, it's like, I need like a notepad. I need to,
Some
you know,
strategy charts that you can pull down.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I need to have like an
Yeah.
index card that I'm like, okay, let's see. It's just really challenging. I think
Oh,
that's what
absolutely.
I'm appreciating. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
thank you.
so
Yeah.
one more thing that I wanted to talk about, and this won't make sense to any of you guys watching if you're still watching, but we were talking about there was a hand, was it King Jack suited in position? There was like an
Yes.
open and a caller.
Yeah.
And I
I
was
had that.
advocating for a three bet. So the reason I'm advocating for that three bet is exactly what we're talking about here. Is that your opponent, unless they have a monster, you're putting them in a tough spot. They don't know you have King Jack suited. When you three bet in that Texas game, you're going to put them in a tough spot. So let's say they have aces and you flop like a draw and you continue, and the board is scary by the turn. You can take it down. Sometimes you're going to make your hand, but a lot of times they won't have aces. A lot of times they're going to call with like ace king offsuit, right? And you
Yeah.
have
Like,
you have king jack. So yes, you have terrible implied odds when you hit your king, but you're going to be able to continuation bet a ton of boards and they're going to be giving up, and like you just have them in a vice, and you can really apply pressure.
yeah, there's less kings that are going to come out, and then
Hmm.
he's in a hard spot. So it's
Hmm.
like, so the hand you're describing was, we're 300 deep, hijack opens to 15, cutoff calls, and then it's to me, on the button, and
Yep.
I have king jack suited,
Yep.
and probably the downswing has kind of let me be a little more conservative, a little
Passive.
probably
Yeah.
more passive.
Hmm.
So it's just like hard to like, yeah, 300, and then to kind of put, because at that point I'm raising to 60 ish, like 60. We
Right.
had two limpers before in early position, and that can be, God knows what they're going to do. But if they could have kings, I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
but if I put to 60, I probably get it heads up. But this seems to be like a competent player. And I'm like, I don't really know if I want to be heads up with him, like
Sure.
he's
Sure.
a, so,
And it's okay to recognize, hey, I don't want to engage this guy and choose to fold instead. But I think I
yeah,
would prefer the three bet or the fold over the call,
three better
just because
fold.
it gets so difficult.
Yeah, when
Because
I
once
called,
you call, then your blinds are coming, right?
yeah, when
So
I called the blind, we got three other callers, so we're
yeah,
going
yeah,
six ways to a flop. So
yeah.
I could
Terrible
have,
spot.
yeah, and I had like I'm blocking kings and jacks, so that's pretty good.
Yep.
So, that I could see, um, Yeah, I could see doing something like that
Well,
there
and think about this. Think about the
in
difference.
position.
Yeah, think about the difference if it was an under the gun open, right?
Yeah, yeah,
The hijack range of opens versus the under the gun range of opens is so drastically different than, like so if this is an under the gun open and it gets to you, like I'm comfortable just going to snap fold on the button there. If there's a
wow,
call in between, because you really don't have a good option, right? You've got a range stronger than your hand, plus a caller that's going to be interested. And even though you have position, like just think about their range composition and how often they are either going to call or four bet you. And so like it's okay, but where the hijack, their opening range has so many like weak hands in it that you can exploit, and even if you don't hit a hand, if they're the only one that
yeah,
calls you and you go to a pot with like a low SPR, you can put them in a miserable situation. So keep in mind how
yeah,
miserable it is for you to play out of position, and then put your opponents there as often as you can. So
yeah. That makes sense. That
yeah,
makes sense. That's
yep,
good advice.
cool.
Yeah,
Well, I know you have to meet somebody 10 minutes ago, so we should
yeah.
probably wrap this up. But any last thoughts?
Um, I mean, that's what I'm working on. I guess. I mean, I'll continue to kind of reflect on in position versus out of position, and then
Yeah.
like you were saying, like try to make more money when you're in position and
Yes.
better, more favorable situation. It's
Yep.
so. So I've just been watching that at the table. So that's what I'll, take away and just keep working at it.
Yeah, and the book "Exploitative Play in Live Poker: Assassinato," when he talks about one of the sections in that book is he's like you want to get good hands, three bet them in position, and get somebody to call you out of position. He's like your equity is so high, even when they have a good hand. They're lacking information in a high leverage pot. Like it's so hard for them to play well. And so in that book, he spends I think a couple chapters even just like do this again, do it over again, do it some more, and whenever you can get people to call out of position in a big pot, you just have them in a really good spot. So anyway, all right, man. Well, thanks. It was fun, and keep me posted on the hands as it goes throughout the week. So, oh,
All
by
right.
the way, for any of you who are still watching, if you're not in there, Jess and I are both in the Discord. We talk hands a lot with several other guys, Adam, Tom, especially. Got to give a shout out to you guys. Thanks for being in there. And yeah, come talk some poker with us. It's a lot of fun. So, all right, Jess, have a good week, man. I'll talk to you later.
All right.